Welcome to everybody. Great to see you all here. Big welcome to Stuart Rickard from Equip My School. Stuart has been coming to the LEHC conferences for quite a few years, and since last year has been, in fact, the coordinator of the exhibitors at our annual conference. So we have quite a close relationship with Stuart. And today he's brought along Paul, and I think Stuart is going to introduce Paul, so I'll shut up and let you get on with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Thank you to you and to LEHC for inviting Equip My School to come and present this afternoon. As you said, my name's Stuart Rickard and my company is called Equip My School. I'm here today to talk to you about structural learning and Paul's company. I recognise that time is a very precious commodity, and thank you for entrusting me with yours this afternoon. I'll do my best not to waste it, and hopefully we'll present for you some entertaining, maybe engaging content for you over the next few minutes. But I need to tell you that I've fallen out with my diary this week because it's not missed an opportunity to remind me that I'm supposed to be in Punta del Este at the originally organised conference for LEHC. But I'm not there. I'm here in my home in Lincolnshire, surrounded by my cats with my wood-burning fire behind me, keeping me nice and warm instead of the sunshine. Yeah, I'm not an educator. I do have a deep admiration for those of you who have taken to the calling and devoted your life to educating. But my work does bring me into contacts, and I get the opportunity to meet and speak to educators all around the world at various international schools, and that's wonderful for me and fantastic. But I'm not here to talk to you about that either. The other half of my work for Equip My School is developing and building relationships with suppliers to education. Excuse me. Those suppliers, some of the best ones that I work with, and we've got a huge range that we do work with. The best ones that I enjoy working with are what I would classify as specialists. Those individuals or organisations who have found their niche within education, something that they've decided or identified is perhaps a problem or shortfall in some way, or could just do with a little bit of work, and they've passionately working away in the background to improve those areas. What I'd like to do with you in a few minutes is introduce you to one of those suppliers. The gentleman that we're going to bring up, invite to speak to us, is a chap called Paul Main from a company called Structural Learning. Paul spent the best part of the last decade working with primary and secondary schools in England, looking at completing research projects at critical thinking, at metacognitive practice, deeper thinking, and looking at how those things impact student attainment. I've been talking with him at length. I've had a number of long conversations with him, and I've already said I'm not an educator, but he certainly entertained and got me thinking during those conversations. So when the opportunity came to present at the LEHC conference, and I believe that the underlying headline of the event was Rethinking Learning, it just seemed like the stars had aligned to me, and I thought, well, I clearly know what I need to do here. I need to bring Paul to you guys. And so that's what I'm going to do. Structural Learning's mission is to get everyone thinking differently, thinking more effectively. The company has a range of resources and professional learning tools that help support that idea and that premise. And our goal for this session is to get you thinking differently. But this session is very much the start of the conversation. So Paul's contact details will be provided at the end, and a wonderful outcome for us would be is if some of you guys would like to continue the conversation with Paul or myself after the event. But I think that's all I need to say for right now. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for that very warm introduction. And thank you, Alan, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all. I'm just going to share my screen with you because I've made this presentation quite visual, and you'll see the reason why for that in a moment. I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully you should be able to see what I'm seeing. And I just need to get the presentation up in its singular form. There we go. So hopefully you should be able to see this. So here's the sort of question I'm posing to you today, I have an answer to it, and I wouldn't be asking you this question if I didn't think there was an answer to it. And by the end of the session, I think you'll hopefully come up with an answer to this question yourself. At the moment, I think we're going through sort of unprecedented times, and this idea of learning being a learnable idea has never been more important than it is now, and that's what I'm going to focus on for this session. Just a quick bit about me, just so you know where I've come from. I've been one of those fortunate people who've had one foot in the education space and another foot in the classroom, and through these various organisations that I've worked with over the years, I've been allowed to sort of experiment with different ideas. So with FutureLab, we're doing lots of interesting ideas around using when handheld devices came out in the early 2000s. We're looking at how those worked, and NFER, we're looking at sort of pure educational research and so on. So I've always been allowed to experiment somewhat, and that's what I've been doing sort of over the last couple of years. In terms of the session, I think to get the most out of this, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I want you to think about two students, two children that you work with, and one of those finds it quite difficult to think. So they might have maybe, I don't know, poor working memory problems. They might find it difficult to focus. Someone who finds it difficult to grasp difficult ideas, and then at the other end of the spectrum, maybe someone who will do everything they can to avoid thinking. So not that they can't think, but they just they're going to try and avoid it to conserve cognitive energy. But just think about those two people, and then think about the ideas that I'm going to present to you, and I think hopefully it will make sense. In terms of what this session is about, we're looking at cognition and how that plays a part in learning. But I don't just want to focus on sort of the academic outcomes, the traditional things you'd expect with cognition, like memory, comprehension, and language, as important as they are. I want you to think about some of those wider issues along the bottom of this graph. So things like resilience, thinking for themselves. And there's two drivers really I see for this. So for our top one, we've got for academic outcomes, parental expectations, the idea of academic inflation, that a degree, you have to have a master's is now worth a degree, and a PhD is worth a master's, and all this sort of thing, and the next generation will have to be educated, and there's no getting around that. But there's this other set of drivers which is around the workplace, and what sort of employers want. So there's these two sort of agendas, and I put there competing agendas ? Basically, I'm saying I don't think they need to be competing, and I hopefully it'll make sense as we go through the presentation. I just want to start with this. We've been looking at sort of some of the workplace outcomes, some of the things that the workplace want. There's lots of people who've been doing research around this, and along the top of that axis, where you can see the 21st Century Skills Partnership for 21st Century Skills, Lisbon Council. Anyway, Cambridge Assessment, where I'm based, well, I'm based in Cambridge, not at Cambridge Assessment, but Cambridge Assessment looked at what sort of employees the employers would want, and there's some sort of unanimous ideas around this. And as you can see there's no getting away from it, that creativity and innovation are going to be necessities as opposed to nice to haves in the workplace. And kind of the rationale for that is that it's to do with artificial intelligence and the depletion of non-skilled jobs, so non-skilled manual jobs, and that those jobs that are going to be safe are the ones where employees are developing new ideas. They're combining different ideas, and they're generating worth through their own imagination. And then you get the ideas like critical thinking, problem solving, and then you can see at the bottom, learning to learn, metacognition. But it's all very much, they're all pointing at the same type of things. And I like it when there's agreement amongst our colleagues, because it usually means that we're pointing in the right direction. So these are the ones that keep coming up, and this is from the World Economic Forum for Skills in 2020. As you can see, complex problem solving continues to be in there. And I love this quote from Alvin Toffler, who's this futurist. He's a communist, and he writes a lot on future ideas and the workplace. I'm not going to read it out, but you can see what he's trying to say there. So what I'm trying to say is being able to learn is not just an important thing for school. After school, in the workplace, there's an expectation that they are going to have to be able to learn. So it's one of those things that I'm arguing for that we need to develop now. Certainly the skills of becoming a learner, but also the habits of becoming a lifelong learner. I just want to ask you this question. Again, it's one of these sort of stimulus questions, but there's a lot of, I always ask this question to people because it's interesting when you ask children this question as well. And I'm asking you, how do you get knowledge? And I think we're in a kind of a situation now where children are spending a lot of time on their screens, and they're getting information and they're turning it into knowledge through a computer. Quite simplistic terms there, but certain people think that I don't know that knowledge is something you can just download off the internet. Some people think it's something that's given to you, or I don't know, maybe my members of my family think that the cleverest people they know are the ones who can remember lots of stuff. But what I'm going to argue today is that knowledge is something that you construct, and with that you can learn how to construct it more effectively. And with that, because I put construct, that sort of implying that it's an active process. It's not something that's passive. This is something that students need to understand how to do in order to become a lifelong learner. So I'm just going to generate, I've got a kind of a series of slides now, and I just want to sort of provide a new perspective on learning. And this is something I've been working on over the last few days, and if it works, it will give the rest of the session plenty of scaffolding. So here we are. So to generate understanding, a child has to organize and connect information effectively. So cognitively, information's coming in and they're connecting it up. That's what learning looks like. If you could pull it outside of someone's head, they've got thought objects coming in and they're connecting to one another, and they're categorizing, they're ranking, they're doing something with that information. And this is Paul Main's very simple model of the mind, but I'm trying to explain it for children to understand. And I think I've had a lot of enjoyment doing this, because it's really, I'm trying to get down to the simplicity, in its simplest terms, what happens when we learn, in view of being able to explain it to children, in view of them becoming better learners. So learning, to learn something effectively, this is called a kind of a logic model, by the way. This is what we've done at University College London. You explain your logic to someone else. That's what I'm going to do to you now. So learning involves thinking productively about lesson content. So I've got to be able to think through a concept, and I've got to be able to think about what to do with that information coming in. So it's going into my working memory, and then I'm constructing it into something meaningful. And that thinking is the mental manipulation of thought objects. So I'm putting in numbers, words, letters, ideas, concepts, and I'm connecting them together. You probably can't see, but I'm using my hands a lot here, because I'm trying to sort of elaborate on that point of it being a sort of a physical exercise. And when we think, we make connections, and that's what all of this is about how we make those connections and how we can make those connections more effectively. And the more connections you have, it implies the more comprehension and definitely more memory. So Daniel Willingham, who wrote a wonderful book, Why Students Don't Like School, argues the point that comprehension memory is comprehension in disguise. So if you understand something fully, you don't need to worry about memory techniques, because if you've consolidated that memory, that means you've connected it up on a sort of neural level, and that, as long as you access that frequently and rehearse it, then you're going to understand it and you will remember it. So that's just laying the foundations for the next set of ideas. So I was trying to explain where this happens to some children, and I was trying to think of something that they knew, which I could explain the workings of the working memory. So I'm sort of pitching the working memory as this. It's a bit like trying to juggle in a telephone box, one of those British telephone boxes that you see in London. There's not much room in there, and it's incredibly cramped. And if you drop something, it's quite difficult to pick it back up, and it sometimes rolls out the bottom, and then it's gone, and it's a bit messy. I was on a cycle ride the other day, and this is a village called Hemmingford Abbots in South Cambridgeshire in England. And I came across this telephone box, and there's this bit of a trend at the moment in the UK that these telephone boxes no longer have telephones in them. And the local parish council turned this one into a library, which I thought was quite unique. And then I had a look at what was inside there. And it says, we welcome small current books, but please do not dump large books here. And I thought, wow, they've just described how the working memory works. It doesn't like big things being dumped in it. So I think that telephone box was positioned there by someone maybe on this webinar to give this some shape. But the telephone box is a really useful way to think about the working memory, and that's what we've got to grapple with. So herein lies the problems. I'm going to set out the problems, and then I'm going to give you some ideas about how we can work with our limited space. So we haven't got much room up there in our working memory to build knowledge. And we drop stuff quite easily if we don't connect it up. If it's not connected and thought about and organized, it kind of tends to drift off. The opacity of the shapes here is supposed to imply fading memories. And there's always new stuff trying to get into your working memory as well. So you think about what your students are going through with the amount of social media, new information coming in, new people talking to them about different ideas. There's not much space in there at the best of times to construct meaningful knowledge. So it's almost a kind of quite a competitive space to work within. So herein lies the answers. Some answers. Okay, so I'm going to elaborate on these, but the first idea is what I'm going to bring to you is this idea about bringing the process of thinking outside of our head. And that sounds a bit abstract, but I'll explain what I mean in a minute. But the whole idea of taking those ideas out of your head and working with them in a visual space. So being able to see your ideas, move them around in some sort of capacity. And the second point is, I think we need a new way to talk about learning. So a child-friendly way to talk about learning that is accessible to everyone. And I'm going to present that to you in a short while, a new idea to help you do that back in your schools. So I'm going to start with we're going to do a thought experiment now. And this is just to prove to you, as wonderful as your working memories are, and I imagine they're quite full up with stuff already today, but I'm going to have a thought experiment with you. So you can do this privately in your head, in your working memory, and we're going to see how well you do with this. So I like starting with statements. This is what I've been doing throughout this sort of last few months is this statement, visuals are essential for learning. I'm going to prove this now. So I'm going to provide you with a paragraph. I just want you to read that. I'm just going to be quiet for 10 seconds whilst you read that paragraph. It's a very simple paragraph, he says, smiling at all of you. There's not an awful lot in there. In fact, it's only 7 lines long, so it's very, very short. I mean, most people can hold that in their working memory. I'm smiling at you. So the point here, what I'm getting you to do is to read for a paragraph. And within that paragraph, you're having to decode all that text. You're having to extrapolate the meaning, and then you're having to hold on to that meaning in your working memory. So if the experiment has worked, your working memory has been overloaded already. with quite relatively small amount of stuff. So let's just see how well you've done. So if you can just remember all of that. He says, smiling at you again. So have a go answering these three questions, just to privately, mentally, if you can. So who's the highest ranking person in the under 7s project? Which team has the most staff in the under 7s project? Which people are not involved with the under 7s project? So very, very, very simple questions. Now I've made it harder for you because I could have, to make it easier for you, I could have shown you that next to that, and then you at least have a reference point so you could jump back between the two. So the point here is that if I want you to understand that, the best thing I could have done is given you a visual template and put that information in there, and so you could understand the relationships between all of those components in there. So instead of you having to decode all of that, get the meaning out, hold on to the meaning, shuffle it around, cause you a bit of anxiety, I don't want to do that. I want to give you access to the meaning, which is about the relationships in that content. So that's the whole idea of learning visually. They're not just nice things to look at. They're a sort of a navigational toolkit that we use to understand and comprehend new information. And this old proverb about, I think if someone has a good repertoire of visual tools, you're showing them how to learn implicitly for themselves. So you bring on this idea of independence, that they can use these ideas, these visual tools, to learn for themselves. So let's keep hold of that idea that these visuals are a mental navigational tool. And what I mean by that is that when incoming information, when you've got information coming in, you know how to process it because you know what to do with it. You know which box to put it in. You know how to align it. You know how to organize it. There's something that you can use to navigate your way through pretty much anything that you'll use in your curriculum that you have in your schools. And without them, we're in this position where we're constantly putting our hand up and asking for guidance all the time. So they put students on a path to independence. I'm just going to share with you a couple of books, and this is not too academic heavy, this presentation. I just want to share two things because there's these two books that have kept me awake. The ideas in these books are just quite profound, and I've never read anything like them. This one here, Barbara Tversky's Mind in Motion. She's a psychologist, and in the UK, we had this idea that permeated schools for a long time, that we were either a visual, audio, or kinesthetic learner. And she, in this book, she draws our attention to all the research to say that actually we're all visual learners, that we understand information from a visual perspective. We understand things in spatial terms and how things are organized in space and time. And I won't go into the ins and outs of the book, but she presents sort of unequivocal evidence that shows you how people process new ideas. And it'll probably be about 15 or 20 years. This book will become sort of integral to how schools deliver the curriculum, because the ideas in there are so profound. I don't think we can ignore them. And I'm going to share with you some of those ideas. Another book, this one is a British author, Oliver Caviglioli, a guy I used to work with for a little while. He created this masterpiece, Dual Coding with Teachers, and he talks about how, again, about visuals being used to help students understand new ideas. And within that, he created this taxonomy of graphic organizers. And within those graphic organizers, he says that a student should be able to understand, should be able to match up those organizers with the content. And that should, if you can understand how to do that, understand how, so which organizer you use with which piece of content, then you're on your path to becoming an independent learner. And there's a finite amount of them, which is really interesting, because that implies that you can learn this quite a young age, and those skills can be passed all the way through your time in school. So a lot of those ideas I've just presented to you, they're quite abstract. And I just want to share with you what they might look like in this time when students are accessing much of the curriculum online. So I'm just going to jump out of my presentation, and I'm going to share with you something that I've set up. So hopefully you can still see this. And I've been looking at how we can incorporate those ideas in digital spaces. So this is idea about using graphic organizers online. I just want to share with you a few ideas of how I would go around using them and how I do use them. So I'm using something here called Whimsical, an online mind mapping toolkit. And within this, I'm just going to give you a quick demo of how you can incorporate some of those ideas that I've just presented to you in a really sort of quick and simple way. I think some of these web-based tools now, they're so simple that you can just start manipulating ideas so quickly and organizing information. It's almost become I don't have to think too much about it. I'm multitasking. I'm talking and doing this at the same time, which is quite a rarity. So very quickly, I can start organizing information and presenting it visually using some of these tools. And then I could maybe imply, I don't know, maybe for the fruit, I can maybe put the biggest fruits at the top here. So I might put the melon. I think that one's bigger than, and then oranges and then carrots. So I started to organize information, and then I can very quickly color code that to show the meaning. And so before I know it, I've started categorizing information without having to think too much about how to use these tools, which is what we want. We want the students to be thinking critically about the content, not about how to use the actual tool. So here I've hopefully just sort of shown you sort of very quickly how I can categorize information using color and using space, which is basically what Barbara Tversky outlines in her book. And then I can do some more interesting things. So I can demonstrate. Here I've got. I'm going to sequence these ideas into something. So this is what happens when you have a puncture. So what do I need to do first? Well, maybe I need to start by taking the tire off, and then I maybe need to replace the inner tube, or I might be able to replace the puncture. So I'll put those two together, and I'll put them up there so that makes sense. And then I'm going to pump up the tire, and then put the tire back on my bike, and then I can cycle off. So what I've just displayed to you there is how I can organize ideas sequentially. So from a chronological perspective, I've organized my ideas. This one was about categories. This one's about sort of time and chronology. So what about if I want to share, I can use things like a Venn diagram. If I want to set up a task for my students where I get them to think about sort of shared attributes, I might want to set up something like this, like a Venn diagram. So very quickly, I can start organizing information. Top Gun, I think that's a bit of both in that one. Dirty Dancing, Definitely Romance. Anyway, you don't need to see me organizing them, but you get the idea. What we can do with these sort of tools is work with information very quickly. We don't have to worry about the functionality, and I think Whimsical, amongst others, really help us get those ideas out of our head. So I'm going to jump back into the presentation now. So what I've just shared with you then was those ideas about how you're thinking online, and I know that all of you have been grappling with that transition, that huge transition to working online, and I've been trying to keep up with those ideas as much as anyone about how we can ensure that students are really effectively thinking about lesson content, and how we can make that transition. So one of the reasons I'm here talking to you is that I had an experience in 2014 that really shaped my thinking about thinking. So the irony was I was working with the National Foundation for Educational Research. I was working with a couple of authors around mind mapping. And then in March 2014, I had a nasty brain injury. I had a brain hemorrhage, a bleed on my brain, which came out of nowhere. And the irony was that it left me with quite an impairment in terms of being able to organize ideas. So you can see the irony. This is me positively reframing the experience, by the way, but I was given the ultimate insight into what it's like to have fuzzy thoughts, to have knotted ideas. And what I realized is that my working memory was depleted at that point. It wasn't working particularly well. Not that I was a a genius before the brain hemorrhage, but it was not working effectively. And so there I was, having to go looking at books like these, you can see on here. I was looking at mind mapping books. I was looking at Tony Buzan, and I was just going through all the literature. And that's when I really focused down and knuckled in on cognition. And that's probably why I have become so obsessed with it over the years. So this graphic that you see in front of me, that's pretty much sums up what it was like to have a brain injury, because you can't grasp hold of those ideas long enough to actually do anything effective. So you can't think productively. It's just too difficult. You just don't have that cognitive architecture to be able to grapple with those ideas. So I was in a position where I had to get those ideas, information out of my head, and I had to put it somewhere where other people could see what I was thinking, so I could communicate effectively, because I just couldn't hold on for those ideas long enough. So I came up with this idea of using Post-it notes, and I started putting them on Lego bricks, and I created this system of being able to rank and categorize and organize information. And that's kind of what the first thing I wanted to share with you. The first creation was this concept. And these are basically cognitive building bricks that you can write on. And it started off as just as a project, as a hobby, as something that was kind of a part of my sort of rehabilitation, if you like. And then I realized that there's plenty of children who needed support, scaffolding, call it what you want. They needed to support for those mental processes that led to learning. So we created sort of a very quick prototype, and that's what it looks like in this picture. You can see here what these children are doing is they're juggling with those bricks. They're like that picture I showed you in the telephone box, but they're outside of that telephone box, and they've got a lot more space to work with those ideas. And you can see the concentration on their face. They're focused in on the content that they're working with, and they've got a lot more space to grapple with those ideas and to position them into something meaningful. So the best way to describe this is what they're doing is they're projecting their thinking out of their head and onto the table. So what that means is that you, the teacher, you can see what they are thinking, which is a really powerful idea. So instead of waiting for doing the post-mortem, when they hand their piece of work in, and you can look at it, you can mark it, and then you give them feedback. With this pedagogy, you can act at point of cognition, so that as they're thinking, you can jump in on their thinking and modify it. So they're going to show up all those misconceptions that they've got, and also show you what they do know. So these students here, I gave them a task to design a city for the future. And I've pretended that I've given them this huge field, and they've got to think about how do they go about building a city. And they start off by putting in the important things like McDonald's, and obviously that's the cornerstone to any civilization. And they start, and then very quickly you can ask them questions. Oh, that's interesting. How are people going to get to your McDonald's? Oh, they've got to go on roads. Oh, we need to put the roads in first. Oh, and what goes underneath the roads? Oh, we will have to have gas, electricity, and water. And so very quickly they start to reason out loud. And so this is one of the sort of finished products. So from the bottom up, they're thinking about how this city would be built. So they're thinking about electricity, sewage system, etc. And then they start building on top of that. So you can see there's a mixture of my ideas and their ideas. And what they've done is they've connected them up into something cohesive. What you don't hear from this webinar is the use of the word because. They use the word because a lot, because what they're doing is they're constantly justifying to one another and engaging in critical thinking. So, and then we've been using it on sort of a linguistic level. So breaking down sentences into words. And the interesting thing with this is that you can start off with something simple and then you start to build it back up. So in both of those circumstances, what they're doing is they're breaking something down, something which is really difficult, something which is incredibly complex. They're breaking it down into parts and then they're putting it back together like an academic jigsaw puzzle. And the only way you can build that jigsaw puzzle is if you know how the bits fit together, which is where the learning happens in this. So think about what I said about Barbara Tversky and about the idea that thinking is basically a spatial activity. That's how we organize information. So this student here, this is a group. We have this term, some schools still use it in the UK, of gifted and talented. It's basically the most able. And these students have been through a cognitive abilities test, and they're the sort of highest performing students in the school. And they use this at this school. They use it as a way of stretching and challenging their more able students. And what's interesting here is I've asked the students, what happens when a tsunami hits? And lots of things happen when a tsunami hits. But what they're able to do is function at a really sophisticated level, because they're thinking about, well, the short-term effects are this, then these things happen, then these things happen. And then you can see in the picture here, this student started to think about disaster relief. That wasn't part of the exercise, but he started to think about, well, then you've got disaster relief, and then you've got to have extra funding available to rebuild the roads, and then on and on and on and on and on. So as opposed to a piece of writing, when you're working on an A4 sheet of paper, it's quite restrictive, whereas using spatial things, whether we're using Whimsical or bricks or online mind mapping tools, post-its, whatever you're using, you can branch off in different ways, and it can take your learning in different directions, which is quite exciting. I'm just going to share with you a couple of other photos, because I'm just aware of time. I wanted to leave some time for some questions, but this is kind of what it looks like for organizing essay plans, putting your ideas out and then making connections, reordering them, and iterating until you're happy with how it works. You would be using it for revision purposes as well. So I appreciate it's very much a sort of a classroom-based tool, but I think that we do have to use our whole body when we learn. I think there's this concept called embodied cognition, and that we do have these hands, and our hands work with our nervous system. Our nervous system's connected to our brains, and by moving things around and talking and articulating ideas, we get to the essence of what being human is all about, and that's sort of creativity and critical thinking. And I appreciate that it is a classroom tool, but we've started using this again now in the UK, and I know things are different in different parts of the world, but we've started to embrace this again, because we know that we can't look at a screen all the time forever. This is not something that's going to go on forever, although we will be using computers as part and parcel of curriculum delivery. So this is what it looks like in practice: a physical idea that helps you organize ideas in a spatial way. I just want to finish this section with just showing you a very quick concept of how this works. I want you to imagine that you're 9 years old, and I'm asking you to write a recount of a recent trip to a zoo that you went to, and this is a way of delivering a cognitive friendly, I need to find a better term than that, but a kind of a cognitive friendly way of writing. So acknowledging that you have a limited working space in your working memory, just get those ideas out about what you saw at the zoo. Well, I had a burger, I saw the lions, and I saw some swans, and then we got on the bus. There's lots of things, you're just listing them, and then we can put them into order. Well, we saw the swans first, then we saw the monkeys, and then we created a chronological order. And then we can start thinking about those linguistic solutions that connect up those concepts. So first of all, I saw the swans. After that, went to the monkey enclosure. And then you can start adding adjectives onto the nouns. So you're starting to create some descriptive writing. For some students, it's quite difficult to find the grammatical solution and try and remember what you've done. So as opposed to treating writing as a linear activity, what we're doing here is treating it as a layered activity, putting ideas on top of one another and connecting them up. And you can get the idea. We gradually build up those concepts with language features until we've got a finished piece of writing. So where we're at with the moment with this, we've been doing some research with Bedfordshire University, which we haven't finished yet, but we're beginning to get some really exciting results from this. And what we're seeing is it's become a really interesting way of learners being able to sort of self-engage in activities, because you can start with something small and then you can connect up, and you don't have to treat learning as this I don't know, as a series of learning objectives as such. You can go off in different directions and take your learning in different ways. And it's just proving a very accessible way to get started. And that's what the teachers have been reporting back to us. And staff like it, teaching staff like it, because you can keep challenging and keep extending, and you can keep rebuilding. It's infinite of possibilities with being able to recreate things. In terms of things that people have been telling us and reporting from our research with Bedfordshire, is this. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the one word there which keeps coming out is this playfulness. Not playing, but playfulness. Playfulness is this idea that students don't have to finish on their first work. You can keep editing and changing, trying things out, which is what we want our students to be like. We don't want them just to do something and then label it wrong and then give up. We want them to be able to say, well, actually that didn't work. Let's try that out. Let's try this out. Let's try that combination out. Oh, those guys over there have done something similar. Let's try what they've done. So it's this idea of being able to constantly change and iterate. And we're trying to wrap it up into a kind of a conceptual model. And that's where I'm going to take this next. But what we're effectively doing with the brick building idea is mixing subject knowledge, or fusing subject knowledge with those academic thinking skills, and sort of integrating sort of language in there. And it sort of sits in this sort of quite neat sort of Venn diagram, that we're not saying this is a thinking skills program as such. We're saying that it's enabling subject teachers to fuse in the core knowledge with the thinking skills. So that's the block building idea. And I just wanted to share with you what happened from that, because I think this would be something you'll be very interested in. Again, these ideas, the next idea is something that was kind of a secondary idea, but it's now becoming the more primary idea. So as we're developing the block building idea, we needed, when you're working with academics, they want some kind of conceptual models, they want a sort of frameworks and those sort of things, and understandably so. So we looked at things like, as you can see here, Bloom's taxonomy, Sodot taxonomy, and a whole series of other ones. And there's several books being written which outlines all of these. They categorize all the different thinking taxonomies. And after all, we thought, well, actually, do you know what? We haven't had one for a little while. Let's go and create one. And I'm going to share that with you now. So what we realized was that a lot of these taxonomies are a bit outdated. You know, like Bloom's taxonomy sort of puts you in a position to almost choose creativity over remembering and understanding. It's putting a premium on creating, but you can't really create something if you don't understand it. So it'd probably be better off being displayed as a series of steps as opposed to a sort of a triangle where it's sort of been placed at the top. Sodot taxonomy, I've always been a big fan of. I find it quite a useful idea that implies that there are stages to go through, but they didn't help children to understand as much as I'd hope. I wanted to create something to help children understand how they think and learn. So this is what I'm going to share with you now. It's a new thinking taxonomy. We're calling this the Universal Thinking Framework. I'm just going to dive into it just to share with you what this thing looks like. It's basically a series of, I'll just explain the sort of rationale for this. If anyone has heard this guy, Daniel Kahneman, he's a psychologist, and he kind of puts it in quite eloquently that, remember that first slide that I showed you about those people who don't want to think, but they can, but it is hard work. And we forget that sometimes, and learning stuff is hard work. So we can all do it, but it is incredibly hard work. And this framework's hopefully going to help students understand the ideas behind cognition and how simple they can be. This slide is supposed to be here. Just bear with me. We do a lot of art in our house, and we sometimes we sit down, we try and draw something new together. And if you ever try and sit and draw a monkey, it's quite difficult to do. You know what a monkey looks like, and unless you're an artist, I think they're quite difficult to draw. You kind of know roughly what they look like. And yeah, we've made loads of attempts, and this is one of them. And it's not particularly our best creation, but we found this book, and it breaks down how to draw a monkey into component parts, and it gives you the shapes. And what you can do is you can start going around the shapes, taking these really baby steps. You go around the shapes, and then you can connect the shapes together. And before you know it, you've got a monkey. And then the next page is how to color it in, then how to draw the background, and etc. And what it does from an artistic perspective, it breaks something down into achievable steps, and that's what this is all about. So I'm going to zoom in on the framework, but as you can see, it's a really colorful, organized way of displaying to teachers and educators what thinking looks like, with simple explanations. So what we did was we looked at some simple ways of starting, which are the green ones, extracting ideas, identifying things, eliminating, categorizing. And then the blue ones are about how you organize them. So spatially, do you want me to connect ideas? Do you want me to match them up, rank them? And the yellow ones are about reinforcing, the orange ones are about integrating language, and the red ones are about how you use that knowledge productively. And I won't go through them all now, but you can see they're just simple icons that help children understand what they are being asked to do, which is a really simple concept, but we hadn't seen it being done properly before, so we had to go ourselves. And we created these. We created this really simple workbook, sort of manual to go alongside it, and we started writing it for teachers, but we think it's probably more for students, and it's about helping both students and educators sort of navigate their way through cognition. So each of those cards has a corresponding template to explain what it is. And this is just to show you sort of, I'm not going to go through all of them now, but you can see that they're just really simple, quite colorful icons that can be integrated into classroom practice. And we use this analogy that it's basically like a roadmap, and you have these signposts along the roadmap. And for students, it helps them figure out which direction to go in with this roadmap. So for educators, we've just released it recently, and what we're doing is we've been looking at how educators can use it to break down academic tasks. So analyze the effects of global warming, where you can use it for breaking down exactly what that means for complex tasks like that. So we're finding it definitely increases accessibility into the curriculum, and provides a shared language. For learners, we've just been doing some student feedback on this, and one of the schools we're working with is a school called Westminster, an independent school in London, and they're finding that giving students this toolkit is quite an interesting idea, because they're used to being told what to do, exactly what to do, and they're not used to making decisions about their own learning. So with the toolkit, you can be prescriptive if you want, but you can also allow freedom to go off in different directions, similar to the block building kit. So I won't go through all this now, but basically the schools that have been using this have been aligning the framework to the curriculum. So we've got the what of the curriculum, and this is the kind of the how. How do we actually engage with the curriculum effectively, as opposed to sort of encompass the curriculum? This is about effectively working with the curriculum. And this is where we've been using it in presentations, worksheets, increasingly online. So we've been using it throughout Microsoft Teams and all of the stuff that goes along with that, using it as the iconography to give students signposts of where to go. And what we're finding is that this remoteness that we find ourselves in now, we need to be able to provide more signposting in cognitive friendly ways, so students can work independently, because they're going off and you're not there with them as such. You can't look over their shoulder and look at their workbooks. You can see them typing and you can see the work that they submit, but it's a strange place where we are at the moment, and we thought this might be an interesting way of being able to provide that extra direction, that extra sort of academic rigor that students would need when they're working remotely. Very quickly, I was going to finish up on the PowerPoint I've got here. I'm going to share with all of you, and I'm also going to share with you some PDFs that I've been creating, and that's going to sort of help explain the concepts a bit further. this is what it looks like. They're basically sort of cards. We've created these for the classroom. We've got a digital version as well. This is what it looks like in practice. This is Birmingham City University, and we've been working with them, using it as a throughout teacher training and using it as sort of pen and paper tasks. And then we're using it in the digital format now with these graphic organizers. So those graphic organizers that you can see in front of you, I'll send all of you this PDF of those graphic organizers. They're great for the classroom. Well, there's something you can fill out as well, so you can send them off and the students can fill them out, and it just ensures that the students are thinking effectively about the content. What's around the corner? This thing that you can see in front of you, this is the digital version, which is drag and drop, putting the icons in. We're really excited by it. Westminster have started trialing it, and it's nearly finished now, and it's a great way of being able to plan lessons and plan those pathways throughout a lesson. It won't look like this exactly. It'll look a lot nicer once it's finished. Anyway, so in terms of, I just wanted to leave you with this. This is what we've been doing recently is trying to wrap all these ideas into professional learning and design thinking. And we've been running sort of courses for teachers and putting all of this into an R&D sort of infrastructure. So if schools are interested in trying out these ideas, we've created this new reward system as well for students, so they can understand when they're doing something really positive. We've created this program, Cognition First, which is about putting cognition central in the classroom and in the virtual classrooms. And we're asking teachers to embark on doing research and development opportunities. So looking at things like collaboration and cognition. And it's about putting research into practice. And we found this the most effective way of being able to integrate these ideas into the classroom. So we've kind of got the ideas are presented to you, but then we've also got a way of being able to implement these into the classroom. I want to leave you with one thing, and then we can, if we've got time, we can have some questions. But one sort of analogy, think of everything I presented today as like a game of Tetris. I know for some people it's a bit like, I don't know, like Pac-Man, where you just go around eating everything up. But for most of us, learning's like Tetris. We have to fit it together in carefully constructed chunks, schemas. So if anything, to take that from this session, but you've got my details on there, and Stuart's details are on there as well. And we welcome sort of any questions now if you have any. I realize I haven't got too much time, but if there's anything you want to ask privately, myself or Stuart, I'm sure would be willing to answer those questions. Alan, I'll let you speak for a bit while I just have a drink.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing. You packed an awful lot in there, and I think lots of really interesting ideas to make us think a little bit outside the box. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question? We've got a couple of minutes.
We've got two Daves in the group, and they're chatting away to each other. They both like the building block products that you showed us, Paul, and have asked how to access it. They've answered each other within the chat, but perhaps you want to tell everybody how they can get access to that building block product.
Well, yeah, that's at the moment we've been selling them in the UK, but I've been teaming up with Stuart, just seeing whether we can actually get those over to you in South America. And I think the answer is yes. Where there's a will, there's a way. We can make that happen. I think the best thing to do is if you sort of express an interest, and then we can look at what that would look like. But yeah, we create them here in the UK, and we can get them over to you. I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. I thought I saw a hand go up. No, somebody just stretching perhaps. What I liked about it is I could see kids from 3 years old to 18 years old all using the same equipment. It seemed like the structure of it would work right across the age range, which is nice.
Yeah, I think if anyone's got sort of working in and all through school, and you're looking for something that can make, you're looking at something that can make learning universal, I think hopefully this is an idea that can transcend right the way through the age groups. That we were worried that 18-year-olds would look at this and say, I'm not playing with blocks, but the way that they use them, very quickly they see them as a learning tool, and they're that in the corridor next to them are using it for something, for categorizing objects that they'd see in the garden. So you can use it. It's a scaffold at the end of the day, so you can use it for whichever activities you're using in the classroom.
Yeah, fantastic. Really, really interesting. I'm sure there are going to be people following up on this. One last chance. If anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment, don't be shy. Yeah, Andy. Go ahead, Andy.
No, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Stuart. I presume you have a website where we can find out more information about all this.
Yes.
Any particular instructions about how to navigate that website?
Yeah, on my website, so it's structural-learning.com. I'm putting, as we're speaking at the moment, I'm putting everything into the chat function, so you'll be able to access all of these ideas in that. But on the website, I'm just putting in the chat function now. You should be able to hopefully see it in there now. On the website, I've put all of those things we've been speaking about in the solutions tab at the top, so that you'll see there's 3 things there. There's professional learning, the block building idea, and the framework. So it's all in there. So if anyone interested in sort of utilizing those ideas, I'm trying to sort of position it as a kind of a construct, a set of ideas. So they're all on there, and hopefully you can download some bits and pieces on the website, and you can see how they all fit together, because I presented the framework and the blocks, but hopefully you can see how the framework works with the blocks, not 2 sort of disparate concepts. I've just sent a few things through the chat function, which you're free to download, and I've just put the website in there as well.
Okay, thank you. Carlos Arturo, you got your hand up.
Carlos, hey, nice work. I really like it. It's very interesting because it can be actually connected to algorithmic thinking and coding. Now, I wanted to ask, because I might have missed this, but is there a way to get more information about the universal learning framework? If I'm not mistaken, that's the name.
Yes, that's all on
the research. Sorry.
Yes, I'll put that. I'm sending you a PDF. You've all should have it now. So it's all within there. So I've put all this sort of the engagement opportunities within that PDF, so you can see how that could be used in your school. So have a look through that, and then we can arrange a conversation. I think the best thing to do is, if for anyone who's interested in using any of these ideas, we can set up a Zoom conversation at your convenience. And then I can take that through it, and then I can understand a bit about your context, and then we can. I'm sure we can get something in place.
Fantastic, thank you. We are now out of time, but I think that stimulated an awful lot of interest, and I'm sure there'll be some follow up on this. So once again, thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Stuart. It's been a really interesting session. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. Bye.